Purple Daily is daily Vikings entertainment. We just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die.
I will ride with this group.
Seriously, man. Please.
And away we go.
There's just so much buzz happening around the NFL Combine. It's rumor season, it's speculation season, that we couldn't just stop at one episode of Purple Daily NFL Takes this week. We had to jump in and give a second one. And we do have a Vikings topic that's going to lead this episode here, and then we'll get into a bunch of other stuff around the league. But thank you guys for supporting Purple Daily NFL Takes here in the first month of this new Purple Daily, call it a spin-off show. The reception has been positive, so thank you guys. You know, you can't box us in to just talk about the Vikings. We've got takes about the Bengals. We got takes about the Rams, the 49ers.
And the Combine is just, it's off the hook this week. This is so great.
It's amazing. So we'll get into the takes here in a moment. A reminder that the 2025 Purple Daily Draft Party, presented by Standard Heating and Air Conditioning, is back at the Fillmore in Minneapolis, the same amazing venue that we all witnessed the Vikings draft J.J. McCarthy last year. Thursday, April 24th, 7 p.m. is the start time. And it'll be a little bit of a longer night just because they're drafting later in the first round. But we'll have some fun stuff planned. Tickets become available 10 a.m. Central Time on March 10th. So that's a week from Monday. Mark your calendars. Set an alert on your phone. scorenorth.com/draft. That's scorenorth.com/draft. Bookmark that if you need to. Tickets become available, general admission and VIP, 10 a.m. Central Time on March 10th. We will also have the national draft coverage on mute on the TVs and the venues. So you can keep an eye on the ESPN coverage while we kind of navigate you through the rest. So we're looking forward to it. It's going to be a blast at the Fillmore again. All right, boys. Take number one here. The Vikings apparently made a controversial hire for their assistant offensive line coach yesterday. The press release came out. I'm sure we all saw it in our inboxes. Okay, Keith Carter is the new assistant offensive line coach for the Vikings, 42 years old. He was a tight end and like a blocking back at UCLA in college. Just a hard-nosed, dirty work player in college. He spent time at various colleges, jumped into the NFL as the Falcons assistant offensive line coach for a couple years, 2015-16. I think that was Dan Quinn. That was like Super Bowl blow a 28-3 lead Falcons, right? So I think he worked under Kyle Shanahan then, who was the coordinator there. And then he went to Tennessee for 5 years as their main offensive line coach. So those Derrick Henry running teams. And he spent 2023-24 as the offensive line coach and run game coordinator for the Jets. Like, okay, so this dude's, the Jets have had some problems, but they can run the ball pretty well. And the Titans had an explosive running game. Helps to have Derrick Henry. Then Kevin Seifert tweeted out a quote from Kevin O'Connell yesterday, who said, this is KOC saying, quote, "You'll find some things about him in regards to being tough on his players, but I think in the number 2 role, he's going to be really good for us." So you start sleuthing around, and there's an article from a year ago, January 2024. A2ZSports.com summarized some events here. The Jets have said they're planning on returning Keith Carter in 2024 to lead what will likely be a rebuilt Jets offensive line, a move that some Jets players don't seem to like. In a now deleted social media post, Jets running back Breece Hall put laughing emojis, easy for me to say, on a social media post from former Titans offensive lineman Taylor Lewan, where he said he didn't like Keith Carter. The post was also retweeted by Mekhi Becton, who was their left tackle at the time. Former Falcons fullback Patrick DeMarco, who was coached by Carter in Atlanta, agreed with Lewan by commenting, "Keith Carter was nobody's favorite coach, and I can say that with a lot of confidence." Former Jets offensive lineman Adam Pankey, who also spent time with Carter in Tennessee, and Tristan Colon have liked posts on social media calling for Keith Carter's firing. Apparently, he's a very intense coach who runs a very intense practice. He has a reputation as a mean-spirited coach, according to this article, who puts players in danger by working them too hard in practice. Robert Saleh, on the other hand, has spoken very highly of Keith Carter, and KOC thought enough to hire. So anyways, wow, never thought we'd see this much angst about an assistant offensive line coach, but here we are.
So I was reading that stuff and I thought, wow, this is sort of un-KO-like. And then I thought, but what does Kevin O'Connell want from his especially interior line? Wants tough, wants mean. Ran a, by 2024 standards, a more difficult training camp. Why? Because he wanted tough. He wanted mean. And because Keith Carter is going to be the assistant to the head offensive line coach, I wonder if this is sort of intentional. Because it's not like he's going to run the entire line. Like, he'll be involved heavily, but he will not run the entire thing. But I wonder if this is a purposeful, where O'Connell sort of knows, hey, you know what? I don't run a real tough ship here. It's a tight ship. It's not a tough ship. But in this case, when we're talking about snarl, when we're talking about spittle coming out from guys' mouths and snot from their nose, the offensive line is where you want that. So I thought, you know what? I bet this is sort of on purpose, but Keith Carter is going to have probably more guardrails here than he did, for instance, with the Jets or Titans. That was my first thought when I parsed through this, Dex.
Yeah, it's un-KO-like, but at the same time, I know he screwed up with Ed Donatel. I don't think Donatel was a bad guy. It was just a bad scheme hire. Donatel just wasn't obviously up to snuff to be a defensive coordinator. But I also trust him vetting the right type of person to be around his players and to be in this culture. So even though he might have gotten a bad rap with the Jets, and let's be honest, let's not look at the Jets as the beacon of stability and good things that are happening and what's coming out of that team. So I actually trust Kevin O'Connell, even though this might come off as a little controversial for now. I blindly trust KOC that he made the right hire here.
Yeah, I also trust KOC. He has a strong enough culture that he's built that you should be able to plop a couple guys in here and have them assimilate a little more to what's been built versus them maybe going rogue. It is interesting, though, that the trail of criticism isn't just the Jets. It goes back to his days with the Titans and the Falcons. But maybe, as KOC said, sliding him into that second role. So it's complicated because, all right, bad reviews from a lot of former players. Also, Vikings, a little soft up front, maybe. Both KOC and Kwesi have been at their press conferences this week, have talked about the importance of just getting better in the trenches on both sides of the ball. So interesting hire, and we'll keep an eye on what the mood is at Vikings camp throughout. Judd's camp notes can be keeping an eye on the assistant offensive line coach and whether he's reaming guys out.
Fingers crossed, F-bomb monster. That's what I want. I want an F-bomb monster. It's like, because, Phil, we were at the training camps in Mankato in the Childress era where you had some crazy assistants. I love crazy assistants in training camp are the best thing of all time.
And much closer access, because you could literally be standing you were just physically closer. You could hear more conversations.
The enemy was off his rocker half the time.
Yeah, while the rest of the NFL world was wondering for years, how has Bieniemy not gotten a job? Those who covered the Vikings when he was a running backs coach are like, we know why.
Adrian.
He's kind of a psychopath.
Could do nothing right. Because he had that raspy voice. 2A, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Just riding his ass.
F-bomb monster. That's what I'm rooting for.
All right, Dex, give us a take.
Yeah, so I love what the UFL is going to do here. And by the way, we get football. I'm very excited for more football. I get to make extra predictions on Write That Down to blow the
Battle
completion
Hawks.
percentage. Battle Hawks.
Name some teams, Dex.
The
Rough Riders.
The Rough Riders. Yeah.
The Brahmas.
The Brahmas.
Brahmas. San Antonio Brahmas, right?
Let's see. I feel.
Can you remember?
I know another one.
Houston. No, Houston's the
Roughnecks.
The
Roughnecks, right?
The Roughnecks or Rough Riders?
Yeah.
Roughnecks.
No, the Roughnecks.
Rough Riders.
Are a
Roughnecks.
CFL team.
Okay. I will say, and I'm on it right now, just on their rules page. Please fix your website, UF. I know there's probably not a lot of money to go around, and you gotta cut corners. That website last year is one of the most atrocious websites I've ever seen when it comes to like finding scores and finding just what should be very easy information. So fix that. However, the 4th and 12 idea for the UFL, I love this. So this year, the UFL, they will do a 4th and 12 from their own 28-yard line. I'm really not sure.
In place of the onside kick, right?
Yeah, in place of an onside kick. This is great. I'm not sure why 28, and I'm also not sure why 12. Kind of. I don't know why it's not like just a 10 or a 15 or a 15 or a 20. Regardless, I think this is a great first step into the NFL, looking at something that they can say, maybe we can mod this. I will say the NFL is definitely not doing a 12. I think it probably starts at 15, maybe even more. But I think this is great for football. The onside kick is just, it doesn't work, man. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't add any excitement. So I think what the UFL is doing here is a great placeholder for the NFL that maybe they can adopt one day. 4th and 12 from the 28-yard line. Sign me up.
This conversation did start on the old Sports Over Beers podcast, the first ever podcast under the Mackey and Judd umbrella back in the 1500 ESPN days. It was Chris Long from Channel 5 and yours truly. I can't remember if Judd was part of that podcast or not, or if it leaked into an on-air discussion. But you were also involved in the early stages of this workshopping from at least 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And we were literally like 2.5 beers in on a Sports Over Beers podcast and said, the onside kick it's not as fun as like the end of an NBA game where you just get the ball at there's a half second left. I can call timeout and just advance the ball and launch a three. It makes the end of games pretty fun. Mm-hmm. So we said, why don't they just run a play? Why don't it would have to be mathematically 4th and something long enough to be hard, but attainable at the same time. I think we landed on like a 4th and 15. 4th and 12 is a lot closer than like the likelihood of converting a 4th and 12 is a lot higher than the likelihood of converting the current onside kick format in the NFL where you can't get a head start.
Yep.
I think 4th and 15 is a little more, it's like, all right, it's gettable, especially if you have like a Lamar Jackson or somebody. But it's not going to be like a 40% make rate. So you have to figure out, and the UFL said, you know what, let's make it more exciting. We're looking for eyeballs. We're looking to make the end of games more exciting. Let's create more offense. So they leaned into a 4th and 12. The 28-yard line thing, my guess is a bunch of people sat in a room and said, all right, well, if you convert the 4th and 12, you can't just be like in field goal range if it's like a 15-yard gain. So we can't make it the 35 because then it's like now you're at the 50, you're one play away. Right. So if you convert, let's say, a 15-yard gain from the 28, you're at the 43. So you still have a couple plays to go. You got to get past midfield. But if you start it too far back from the 20 and you don't get it, now the opposing team is like well within field goal range. So I think they wanted to put it on the fringe of field goal range for the opposing team. If you don't get it, man, it would have been hilarious to listen to the debates over the 27-yard line. No, it's got to be the 30-yard line. And the traditionalists are going to hate this, but the onside kick as currently constructed is the most boring. You talk about the tush push being boring. No, this is like an end-of-game swing situation, and there's almost zero chance. The Vikings gave one up against Chicago, but there's basically zero chance of recovering it. This makes it fun. Yes, officials could screw it up with a bad call. Hopefully that's why replay assist could be implemented to make sure there's fewer bad calls. I love this. The NFL should steal this.
So when we originally talked about the idea, and I think Long pushed it first, but you and Long were in sync. That was with the old onside kick as well. So that was the quote unquote exciting one. Like this now is atrocious. It's terrible. And the fact that you have to declare it and the fact you can't do it as a surprise ever. Now I did some sleuthing last night. It looks like this is going to be discussed in March by the league, and that the National Football League is going to look at 4th and 15 or 20. So they agree that 12 is too short, which I'm fine with.
The UFL's like, hey, we don't have anything to lose. Let's make this more exciting. Let's make it a 4th and 2. Tush push your way.
No, exactly. Yeah. Tush push it. Yeah, that'd be great. But anyway, this has to happen. Like this needs to happen. There's no reason to have a sport that is that exciting purposely end anticlimactically because you're all of a sudden like, well, that's a bridge too far for player safety, right?
Yeah.
Like we've got 3 hours of hits and yes, it's safer than it used to be, but you can't foolproof safe football. And then at the very end in a close game, it's like, but here's where it's foolproof safe.
Couple things on this, because like make it fun at the end. And I only have the snippet of the rule in front of me here, where if it's you can only do this in the UFL if it's the fourth quarter and the game is tied or you're trailing. So you wouldn't be able to. Yep. This would be crazy, but like, all right, we're leading the game and we feel like our offense is unstoppable. Let's just run a play on 4th and 12 and just keep the ball. Like, you can't do that. You have to be tied or trailing.
Sure.
But my next question is, what if you score a touchdown? Is it it's a 4th and 12 and the ball is live, and if you score a touchdown on the 4th and 12, it would be a 72-yard touchdown. It's a touchdown, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Why not?
I love this, man. So you could get into a situation where, let's say you're down 31-10 going into the fourth quarter. You score a touchdown. Now it's 31-17. All right, 4th and 12. Nothing to lose. You would not go for the onside kick in that spot. The strategy changes drastically. If you cut it to, if it's the beginning of the fourth quarter and you cut it to 31-17, 100 times out of 100, NFL teams are kicking the ball off and playing defense, even though you've already given up 31 points in 3 quarters and you can't stop the other team. Now, with the UFL, teams are much more likely to go for the 4th and 12 earlier than they would go for an onside kick, because you're going to feel more confident that, we just need to dial up a play. It's not up to the onside kick gods. Let's dial one up here.
I love this. It's more fun.
Yeah.
It's more fun. And the onside kick has been neutered to the point it just stinks now. So yes, it's a great idea. All right, here's my statement. Someone is fibbing at Atlanta. Somebody is fibbing. We got problems. So Kirk Cousins at the Super Bowl week, of course, I'm sure he was promoting like a body wash or something like that. Okay. So he tells some, I don't know, talk shows or something, that he actually hadn't said this before, but that he hurt his right shoulder and elbow in week 10 against the Saints, which then, of course, the Falcons folks, their GM and coach, Fontenot and Morris hadn't talked until yesterday. So there was no chance to be like, oh, what's your response? Well, they were asked about it, and both of them said, we had no idea. We had no idea. Now, here's where it gets even more hanky, though. Here's where, and this is the type of Cousins-esque stuff that Kirk does. Where it gets more hanky is there was a situation in week 11 of the season where Kirk Cousins was lifted with a right shoulder and elbow, or was listed on the injury report with a right shoulder and elbow issue. Okay. At the time, asked after a game about this, Kirk Cousins said that was a clerical error. I shouldn't have been on it.
Yeah.
But you can't avoid the injury report if you're hurt. So either Kirk didn't tell them, but that's not plausible. If they put him on the injury report with the exact point, and then it looks now like Kirk might have told him, take me off, and they did, somebody is lying, and Kirk Cousins is in the middle of a big pile of a doo-doo NFL sandwich here.
Are you 6 years old?
That's what he's in. Kirk Cousins is in
doo-doo
A
sandwich.
doo-doo fib. He used the word fib. I've only been.
Yes.
That's like that was like scarier than saying the word lie when I was little. Like, are you fibbing?
Yeah. And Kirk, I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. But anyway, so we got problems here because I think the Falcons did know. I think the Falcons correctly listed him and then mysteriously took him off. And Kirk calling it a clerical error at the time is now obvious crap since he decided to sell himself out and say, no, I was hurt.
Yeah, this is an obvious case of, it just between Kirk and the Falcons. Like, Kirk is trying to, and his agents and whatever, are trying to preserve some career value here. Why did you get benched 1 year into a 4-year, $180 million contract? And I was banged up, because you're not going to come out and say I was awful and fell off a cliff. You either have to say, my Achilles, there's 3 answers, right? There's I was awful, period. which is bad if you're trying to sign on with another team. I'm cooked. I'm old. The second answer would be I wasn't fully recovered from my Achilles tendon injury. I came back a little early, and I wasn't physically ready, which maybe is a little bit better of an answer. But now you're leaving teams questioning whether your Achilles is a problem. But the third answer would be I was banged up more than people knew, and I didn't want to talk about it in the moment. And it's an obvious sort of ploy to preserve some value. But man, when you kind of rise up from this little micro fight that these sides are having, they're going to cut him. They have to cut him because there's no way you're going to pay him $40+ million to not play. Like, you want to allocate those resources as soon as possible to other players. But the problem is, if they cut him or when they cut him, the Falcons are going to be on the hook for $65 million in dead cap.
Yep. But if they do it one of the first, it's 20 and like 4. It's still bad, but at least
spreads it over 2 years.
A little bit. But yes, they're going to get divorced.
They could post June 1st, designate the cut to spread it, which they will. But still, you're going to be on the hook for $60+ million in dead cap, whether it all lands in 1 year or whether it's spread over 2 years. And guess what that does? It takes away resources to build a roster around a young quarterback in Michael Penix. This is one of the biggest first guess free agency disasters in the history of modern pro football. Like, it made no sense when they signed Cousins. All right, whatever, it's an overpay, but you want someone who can throw the ball to these weapons. When they drafted Penix, it became unforgivable, and this is the result.
And this is why KO, in my opinion, was so important to Kirk. KO controlled him. Like, this is now back to sort of the Kirk Zim stuff, right?
Yeah.
Infighting that we don't meet. Kirk comes out and says, well, he hasn't talked to me, which, by the way, yeah, that might be true, but did you talk to him? Like, there's a lot of questions here. And this fib furthers the how much has Kirk been telling the truth about things. Like, you realize how much control, like KO, who's incredibly smart as well, but KO catered to Kirk. He made Kirk's life as easy as possible and, quite frankly, made Kirk look really good, both on and off the field. Well, now we're back to Kirk being Kirk, which is I'm very selective about what's good. And I guarantee you, he forgot about being on the injury report in week 11, and he forgot the fact that at the time he dismissed it as a clerical error. You guys, we've covered this league for a long time. You name me one time that you have seen a guy turn up on an injury report and it be walked back with, oh, clerical error there.
Yeah, no, I do think he was legitimately banged up, and then in the moment he is saying in week 13 or whatever it was, like, I'm fine. I'm doing this because you don't want to, you want to be viewed as soft or whatever locker room culture.
But he then should have been left on the report. But he told them, I think what happened was at the time he said, take me off of it, which they did. I think that, just to be clear here, I think that the Falcons are lying too. But again, we've stepped into a pile of Kirk mess because this is what Kirk does when he doesn't have a guy like KO to help run his life.
Yeah.
Kirk doo-doo.
Stepping in a big pile of doo-doo.
A doo-doo sandwich.
Also, when are teams going to learn, whether it was the Kirk contract off an Achilles, these desperate teams, you think we're so desperate, or we're scared of moving off of a pretty good option at quarterback. We don't really want to start over. We're not confident in maybe building up quarterback. When are teams going to learn to stop paying non-elite needle-moving quarterbacks? I mean, look how much evidence we have just in the last few years with the Cousins contract, Dak Prescott, and the amount of resources he's taking up. And it's not that these guys are bad players, but this is a team game. And the quarterback is the most influential player on the team, but at a certain point, like, if you can't put together an offensive line and a defense and you're asking Dak Prescott and Kirk Cousins to fix it, I guess it's kind of unfair to ask that of those players, but you don't have to pay Dak Prescott $60 million. Well, Trevor Lawrence is making $55. Tua can't stay on the field making $50 whatever million. Deshaun Watson, like, when are teams going to learn?
It's old guys too. The Brett Favre contract in 2009 and into 2010 is a brilliant contract. 1 year in 2009, they paid him $1 million per game, which was very, very fair and paid off. Why on earth, if you're the Jets, like, Aaron Rodgers is old. before the Achilles went, he's old, right? Mm-hmm. Why are you giving him a multi-year? Why are you tying up your finances? If he wants to play for you, that's awesome. You sign him to a 1-year contract. Like, these are the things. The quarterback market's become so screwed up, and it's not, well, to go back to Favre again, at that time, it was actually pretty sane. And the Vikings made a big spend for 1 year, and then he was off the books, and that's fine. But yeah, you're right. And this whole thing of quarterbacks now mandating that I'm going to get this, I'm going to get that. Why on earth would anybody, with Kirk Cousins coming off an Achilles, why would anybody have said anything more than we'll give you a 1-year contract, we'll pay you very well for a year, but we're not tying up guaranteed cash into the next 2 to 3 years?
No. Yeah, I mean, amen. Okay. My next take is screw the Cleveland Browns.
Whoa.
Such a disaster franchise. 2 things on this. Number 1, the general manager of the Browns, Andrew, what's his name? Andrew Barry came out yesterday and said, hey, unequivocally, like, we aren't going to trade Myles Garrett. And I get that, because Myles Garrett is their best player and he's a Hall of Famer. But Myles Garrett has paid his dues with this embarrassing clown franchise for 8 seasons. He's got maybe 2 or 3 years left of prime peak football. Maybe, because an injury could strike at any time. And he's finally saying after 8 years, yeah, I can't do this anymore. And he's been respectful about it. I mean, the messages he put out kind of declaring like, hey, love the fans, but it's been 8 years. Joe Thomas stuck around, and I feel bad for Joe Thomas. Like, that dude deserved to chase a championship more than any offensive lineman in my lifetime, and he stuck it out with the Browns because he wanted to be the one. Myles Garrett, you're not going to be the one either. He realized it. No one can turn around that force of to steal a word from Judd, doo-doo franchise.
Yep.
And so, Browns, screw you if you hold on to Myles Garrett. He deserves to go win a championship somewhere. But the other reason I say screw you, Browns, is because the NFL Players Association team report cards just came out.
Oh, yeah.
And I could see it if you were like highly regarded in a bunch of different ways. And we can go through this from a Vikings perspective maybe on tomorrow's show, because there's a lot to talk about here. But if you were like highly regarded and you maybe had a bad luck injury year or something, and you just want to hey, stick around for a minute and let us do right this offseason. The Browns have received, according to players, the NFLPA, there's like 10 different categories. Treatment of families, D+.
Wow.
Training room, D+. Locker room, F-.
Whoa.
Team, F-. Team travel, D. Head coach, C. Kevin Stefanski. Ownership, C+. When you add it all together and you weight it, so they have like a weight on each of these categories.
Yeah.
The Browns are ranked 30th in NFL Players Association organizational satisfaction. The only teams below them are the Patriots and the Arizona Cardinals, who notoriously have just been awful and cheap. So you continue to have for decades a garbage franchise. You have a potential criminal as your starting quarterback who's now blown his Achilles out a couple times. And you have an all-world caliber defensive player who, after 8 years, is just asking for one shot to go play somewhere else. And you are denying him that shot. Screw you, Browns. Screw you.
How on earth do you get an F- in a category and your owner gets a C+? Jimmy Haslam should get an F. Jimmy Haslam, like you can't. That's on him. Like if your facility sucked, guess what? That's the owner.
In fairness, I think a couple things on that. The Jets are the only team to give the owner an F. There's a couple of Ds, like Patriots are a D with Robert Kraft. That's interesting.
That's now a D, huh? Interesting. Yeah.
Steelers a D.
Yeah.
Really?
Buccaneers. But I think there's a little bit of fear there where, okay, I know this is supposed to be anonymous, and I can definitely rip the weight room and maybe like the food. But if I rip the owner and it's not anonymous in some form, so there might be a little bit of fear that drives the ownership grades.
Yeah, I think the Myles Garrett thing, their stance currently, I think, is to try to drive up his price as much as possible, right? Like, because if they come out and say, "Oh, we'll move him," well, the team's going to say, "Okay, we'll give you a second round pick," because I mean, he's worth a couple of firsts at least.
I'd say multiple firsts. Yeah.
So that's my guess. But yes, they are. And Kevin Stefanski, you need to escape, man. I think he's a good coach. I think he could be extremely successful. But to Phil's point, get out of that dumpster fire.
He would also it's a tough sled. I mean, maybe there's I don't know. Is there a quarterback savior in this draft? It doesn't look like it. I don't know that anyone can overcome just the gravitational pull.
Correct.
That franchise has. I think Stefanski's done an admirable enough job. He's been a NFL coach of the year in Cleveland. I think people on the outside recognize twice. Yep. Boy, that dude has done an amazing job in a really tough position. Let's say he gets fired or whatever. He becomes a coordinator, has some success. He will get a second shot with a better run organization with what he's done in Cleveland so far.
I agree completely.
All right, my next statement is add another name to the reckless trade speculation list. I saw Rap Sheet tweet this out about 30 minutes ago. We're recording this at about 11:15 a.m. Central Time for us. The Packers have had trade conversations around cornerback Jaire Alexander, and they are open to moving him to the right place. Alexander, just 28 years old, a two-time Pro Bowler, is considered the most decorated cornerback available. Jaire has played in just 14 games over the last 2 seasons.
Yeah,
he's been banged up. In fact, 3 of the last 4 seasons, he's played in 7 games or less in each of those seasons. So he's been banged up. He talks a lot of smack. I do love the war between him and Justin Jefferson when Jaire decides to play, by the way. But I love that I think our trade chatter here, I know Stafford, we'll see what happens. I saw McVay also put some comments out there about the whole Stafford situation. But I think the trade market here is going to be really interesting. We just talked about Myles Garrett. Does Jaire get traded? And, man, maybe an avenue within another one is just how fast prime cornerbacks erode. Like, Jaire was the best cornerback in the NFL, and he's only 28 years old. Like, he's not an old man by any means, and here he is, haven't been able to stay on the field over the last 2 seasons, and the Packers are now considering moving on from him. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in his career, when opposing quarterbacks target him, they have an 81.8 passer rating, which is that's Christian Ponder level-ish, So, but he's not on the field. And I don't think, just from a Vikings perspective real quick, because it is Purple Daily NFL Takes, I don't know that there is a world in which the Packers would move him to the Vikings unless you drastically overpay in draft pick compensation, which if you're the Vikings, wouldn't you rather just bring Byron Murphy back and not give him draft picks? So,
yes.
But, there's a player in there if he can play more than the 361 snaps he played last year. But it would take away, again, when he's on the field, a really fun rivalry between him and Justin Jefferson in Minnesota. But, yep, that's another. So, there's some players out there, man. Stafford and Myles Garrett and now Jaire Alexander. There's others out there that have been floated too. Washington, we talked about him yesterday. Allen.
Jonathan Allen,
yeah.
Jonathan Allen, yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Hard pass, though, on Jaire. He doesn't play enough. He doesn't play enough, and he's a weird dude. Like, he's really good when he decides to play, but, there has been far too many times where it's like, he's still out. And look, the Packers don't fall into that organizational just messed up where it's like, oh, okay, he doesn't play because his franchise messed up. So hard pass on him for me. My final statement is this. I have the next candidate for Kevin O'Connell's rehabilitation quarterback school.
Oh.
And remember, this isn't to bring a guy in necessarily to start. This is to bring a guy in because KO has a job, that is JJ McCarthy's development, but then he has a hobby. That is saving quarterbacks who have been lost. My candidate, my next guy to show up here as a backup, Anthony Richardson.
Oh,
wow.
So the Colts have announced that we are going to, and the Colts are they're teetering on the brink of being beyond screwed up. The Colts have announced we're going to bring in competition. We're going to bring in competition for this young man. And by the way, if you have a quarterback in the National Football League who needs a blow and leaves the field, that's on you. That's on your coaching. Like, that is an incredible Bush League move, but it's a move that if a quarterback thinks that's okay, that's your franchise. But the other thing too is two things. Don't forget, among the quarterbacks, and we have firsthand sound of this, among the quarterbacks that KOC went and embraced and said, I believe in you, your coaching staff does too. Probably not, but he was being nice. Post-game, the Colts game, that was KO and Richardson. The other thing is, don't forget, there were strong rumblings that the Vikings and Kevin O'Connell loved Richardson and actually tried to get him in the draft. I think he is the next logical, because he's really screwed up now, and they're going to bring in a competition of a veteran.
How would you? What if they trade him? And by the way, there's a little Stafford. I don't know if it's like credibly reported, but there's some Colts Stafford fringe steam, I will say, at the combine this week. And it might just be like people in the game that are in media and stuff kind of speculating on it. But if the Colts just decided we're moving off of Anthony Richardson and we're going to get back into the veteran quarterback business, who have they gone through, man? Carson Wentz, Joe Flacco, Phillip Rivers. They've tried all these dudes. Matt Ryan. Yeah, we're gonna get back into that business, and we're gonna go get Kirk Cousins for a year or something. Sure. What would Anthony Richardson command in a trade?
Oh,
not a first-round pick at all.
No.
Because if you want him to enter KOC's quarterback rehab university, you have to trade for him. They're not cutting him.
Yeah, I was thinking that down the road he might get cut, but right now, here's the problem: Richardson needs Kevin more than Kevin certainly needs him. So like, I was just thinking, like if we go through one more year of here's veteran QB, here's Kirk Cousins, Anthony Richardson's going to learn from Kirk, and it's a disaster. Of course, it probably would be. And eventually the Colts just cut ties because the Colts are the Colts, which is too bad. I think that Anthony Richardson, under Kevin's tutelage, playing or not, would really regain some confidence and could really get some coaching. And I would say it's safe to say that he has lacked quality coaching.
What's amazing about Richardson is since graduating high school 6 years ago, he has attempted in college and NFL 741 pass attempts.
That's it. For context,
Joe Burrow, obviously one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, last season in the NFL had 650 pass attempts. And this guy has barely thrown the football since graduating high school when you're still an incredibly raw prospect and athlete. Yeah, he needs time. He needs reps. He needs a lot.
That makes me nervous. Trey Lance was kind of like that too. Although Trey Lance showed more accuracy in the limited snaps in college and in the pro day process, all that stuff. I just worry. This is the NFL, man. We don't have time to turn you into an accurate thrower. That is on you to get better at on your time. Yep. We're not going to sit there. There's some things we could tweak with your mechanics and your footwork, but at the end of the day, like if you're a 50% thrower of the football in the NFL, we might be able to mechanically tweak you to get to 55%. You need to be above 60% in today's NFL, that just makes me nervous with Anthony Richardson.
Absolutely. And I'm not saying that he would come here to start. I'm saying that he would literally come here to just learn. Like the beginning problem that I've seen with the Colts is the kid has no idea how to be a professional. But so yes, he would be the car in the KO garage being worked on.
Yeah, he might never play a game if he's free in 2 years, I'm interested. Exactly. If I have to trade even a 5th round draft pick for him, call us in 2 years. Your application to quarterback rehab university has been rejected on the grounds of your completion percentage needs to get to at least 55 for us to consider you.
Yes. If the Colts would, but the Colts, I mean, when they say that they're going to bring in again Kirk Cousins, right? Like the kid's screwed now. So yes, if he gets released, and I'm not pushing for him to come here and play. I am literally saying KO has a secondary, like his Saturday hobby is taking these kids and trying to fix them. And I know for a fact that there was interest in this quarterback at one time. So perhaps he thinks that he could fix him. But yeah, I'm not pushing for him playing. I'm just saying he needs Kevin O'Connell.
A lot of guys could use a little Kevin O'Connell in their life.
But he doesn't want them all. That's the thing about it. There's a definite group that Kevin O'Connell does not want.
Will Levis.
It's got to be, exactly. He has no interest in them.
Yep, he falls in that category. Okay, we're gonna save the report card stuff. There's a lot to get to with like the Vikings report card and where they sit relative to the rest of the other 31 teams. We'll do that as part of because we had Thor's Day on a Monday, and Thor's at the Combine all week, so we'll catch up with him next week. So tomorrow's episode, call it a Vikings news edition of Purple Daily with a bunch of speculation, this report card stuff. Those are the NFL takes. Purple Daily NFL takes.